Hello folks, second video of the React hooks series, and for this one we'll focus on the useEffect hook. As I explained on the last video, the life cycle of the React components are basically mounting, updating, and unmounting. And the useEffect allows us to interact with those events. For example, let's go to the code. First, I'll import the useEffect, and as I showed on the last video, we have this extension, React Hook Snippets, that gives us some snippets to write the hooks. I'll use the one for useEffect, that stands for useEffect hook, and let's go. One comment more, I'll leave it right now, so I also explain it. But the useEffect hook, if I type here useEffect hook, it added a bunch of content here. There's an array here, a return with a cleanup. I know it might be confusing at first sight, but let me just simplify it as much as I can. So right now it's just a method that receives a callback function. So let's say I want to run rendered here with an emoji. Oops, I dragged that down. 1 second. Yeah, that's our log. So if I refresh the page, we'll see that rendered shows twice. The reason for that is because the strict mode does one extra render just to do some checks. So for example, if we are caught in an infinite loop, for example, instead of being stuck, it will show an error message instead of crashing the browser. So that's why we usually leave that. But I'm removing it. We know exactly what's the expected output when we are working in production. So when I refresh the page, we get one rendered. But if I'll also import here the use state. If I had a state variable here called input value that starts as an empty string, and just like on the last video, I'm gonna have an input here that the value is being controlled by the state variable. That means that every time I type on this input, we'll get a re-render. So let me do that. I'll write something here. You can see that I already re-rendered the page 31 times, right? And that's normal, that's expected. But do I really want to run this useEffect, this function here, every time I type something on this input? Maybe not. So something we can do is adding a dependency array here. The dependencies array basically says, hey, just run this function again if we have a value being updated here. So since we are leaving an empty array, it's basically saying, hey, never run this again. So if I refresh the page right now, we got the render the first time. And now, even though we are re-rendering the component, we are not triggering that again. If I left a console log here outside with just a bunch of A's, we would see that this component here we are running that again, and all this code outside with just a console log A. So, but this function just runs the first time when the component renders. All right. So that would be equivalent to the component did mount of the lifecycle methods that we used to use with the class components. That's it. But what if I want to add a variable here? Let's say we have a button here, a use state variable, sorry, called count. Let's go with count again. Count starts being 0. And let's say we have a shopping cart with a product. I'll have two buttons. One will be, let me just break that here so we can see it entirely. So we have a plus here. We'll have one for decrementing the item that I'm buying. And I'll have a string here saying count and, I don't know, apples. Yeah, those are how many apples we are buying. Make sense? Oops, I'm always incrementing. This one should be -1. All right, so let's say we are using that to buy apples. But I want to disable this button. Or let me think of, no, I'm showing an error message right here. Error message. I'll add a P here. And this P will show like a, not a class. I'm just gonna add a style here and that color red. You can't have negative values. So if I add that, we have this error message saying that we can't, oops, sorry, that we can't have negative values. But let's say we could even have other types of error. So in this case, let me do the following. I'll have a use state here, error message, which will be an empty string. And down here, I'm gonna have a conditional, which is if error message, then let me set this to the next line. So if we have an error message, just if we do, then we are adding this P with the error message. Right now, we don't have any. So the use effect could be a good place for us to check that, because we could check if count is less than 0, then we'll set the error message for negative. Let's actually return this value and add the other conditions. For example, if count is greater than 10, then we'll return count cannot be greater than 10. Instead of count, number of apples cannot be negative and number of apples cannot be greater than 10. We are setting a bunch of errors here, and in the end, if you didn't fall under any of these, we'll just have the set error message to nothing again. So notice something. If I just save it as it is, I'm not getting the error message, and that's because we only run the use effect once. If I remove that, it will work because we are re-rendering it. But the problem is that we are running those conditions even when we are typing here. We are getting here those render, and that's unwanted. We just want to check those if the count changes. So we can add the count to the dependencies array. We can add multiple variables, that's why it's an array. And now, if I type here, we are not calling this function anymore. Just when we update this value, we can check that by adding again the rendered. This time I'm not adding the emoji. It's too hard to do that. So rendered, if I type here, we don't get the render anymore, just the bunch of face that I added here. Let me remove it. But if I click here, rendered, so it does a check. Make sense? So right now, you saw how to use the use effect to just run on the first render, and now how to handle updates with use effect. And as a last one, I want to show you how to use on the component will unmount. Like before the component unmount, I want to do something. For that, I'll create a new component here. Let's call it comp of component, and this one will return a div with an h1. That's fine. I'll put an h2. It will have a style background red. I like red. And let me show. Should I remove those? No, I won't. So let me just add it here. Comp. Here's comp. So let's say I'll do something different actually. Yeah, I'll say that comp is bigger than that. No, comp's fine with that size. But let's say that comp use effect. All right. When comp's rendered, I'm gonna add an event to the screen, which is, just think about it. Yeah, alert when cursor leaves. So when the cursor leaves, we're gonna alert cursor left the component, which could be something like, are you already leaving? Because maybe the user is doing something such as buying something, and I'm just saying, hey, don't leave yet. So I'm gonna add an event listener called mouse leave to the component, to the document, sorry, and it calls alert. And let's see if it works right now. It works. Are you already leaving? But if comp is not on the screen, I don't want it to show anymore. So what I'm gonna do is I'll return if we return a function, that's what I want to say. Then useEffect will understand that when this component unmounts, we want to remove the event listener. It's not exactly that, but I'll get into details very soon. So if we do that right now, I'll also add another state variable here, which will be show comp. Will be false initially, and I'll add a button here. This one will be a toggle comp. On click, it will set show comp to not show comp. And here, actually, down here where we have comp, where's comp? Here. I'm gonna add a condition which is show comp and comp. So right now we don't really see comp, and I can. Why? Oh, it wasn't. Sorry, my mistake. Anyways, right now we are not getting the event, but if I toggle comp, now we get the event. And if I hide again, I'm expecting useEffect to have called that returned function that removes the event. So yeah, it doesn't show that message anymore. Does it make sense? I really hope it's clear. The reason I said it's not exactly that, I said that is when the components is unmounting, is because it depends on the dependencies array. If we had something like a variable here, for example, count, if we updated count, the return would also be triggered. All right, let me show you. If we have count here, and right now, instead of leaving all of that, I'm gonna comment this code, and I'll alert return. It will listen to count, and I'm gonna pass count to this guy. So let's see. Toggle comp. Oh yeah. Now I'm gonna add something, return. So it basically is, hey, that useEffect's not what I want anymore because we got an update. The reason it works for the unmount here is because we have an empty dependency array, so we're not getting other types of updates to the useEffect, just when the component's unmounting. All right. So just so you have that in mind. So if you want something to happen strictly when the component's unmounting, you should have an empty dependencies array. And you can have, by the way, multiple useEffects in your component. It should work. Even though I would generally suggest to avoid useEffect, because sometimes you can achieve the same result. Not for this example, you would need a useEffect. But sometimes you can achieve the same result by doing other stuff. I don't know about the first example. Let me just see it. I'll remove comp for now. Let me just simplify a little bit the code. Yeah. So for this first example, we want to check something if count's greater than 0 or less. Yeah, so for this one, for example, we could even, we didn't need useEffect for that. If I just had a function here, like validate input with the same thing, return nothing, instead of this one, we don't have an error message anymore. We'll just return the error. I'll remove this one as well. So no useEffects anymore. Then I could create a regular variable here called validate input. No, sorry, error message would be validate input. And that would still work in theory. Let's see, let's check. So it works. Why is it updating if I'm not using a state variable anymore for error message? That's because I know that error message updates every time we are rechecking that here, every time we change count. So we do get a new re-render because of count. And since we are re-rendering again, I don't need to set a new state variable. I can just work with the output of it. The downside here is that we would call that on every re-render, even if we are typing in this input. For that specific case, it's not really causing any performance issues. That would be a valid solution for your application. And also, sometimes you can wrap your useEffect call inside a custom hook that you built and make the code clearer. But yeah, I hope everything is perfectly clear. I hope you understood useEffect. I hope you got an idea of when you don't need useEffect, like this example here, and when you need it. I hope you understood how to replace the component did mount, the component and the component will unmount with useEffect. If so, that was my goal. It's fulfilled. Like this video, please subscribe to the channel, and yeah, see you on the next video.